the Supreme Court cases.
That's just some of them. Read them and read them clearly and distinctly.
Mind you, I keep this in my car, everybody, for this sheer purpose. 13 Supreme Court law case reports. Number 1, the right to travel, the right to mode of conveyance, the right to locomotion are all absolute rights, and the police cannot make void the exercise of rights. State versus Armstead.
Now, is that not the position that she held by law? And what did they do? They assassinated her, didn't they? And the black shills working for the Southern Christian Poverty Law Firm have been doing what? Knocking her, talking about she's out to lunch, trying to say that we set her up for assassination.
They don't want you to wake up.
Do you see? And she was upholding law. And isn't that the oath of ethics? Didn't they know what they was doing? Didn't she know? Because they were harassing and threatening her earlier. They even removed documents so they could cover up. And even while they were plotting, sending out a SWAT team to assassinate her, they were erasing her Facebook page at the same time.
Yep.
Now you tell me that's not a clear sign of conspiracy. Now, I'm not going to interrupt again. I want you to read them all. And then I want you to talk as a sister, as a human. And then look at these black shills that have been talking trash. Doesn't this information expose them? Now, go ahead, read it all the way through.
Number 2, the use of highways for the purpose of travel and transportation is not a mere privilege, but a common and fundamental right of which the public and natural beings cannot be rightfully deprived. Chicago Motor Coach versus Chicago 33, Illinois. Number 3, the right to park or travel is part of the liberty of which the natural person, citizen, cannot be deprived without due process of law under the 5th Amendment of the United States Constitution. That includes parking on Philadelphia streets. Number 4, the right of a citizen to travel upon public highways and to transport one's property thereon, either by carriage or automobile, is not a mere privilege, which a city may prohibit or permit at will, but a common right which he or she under the right to life and liberty, and which he or she has under the right to liberty in the pursuit of happiness. Thomas versus Smith. Number 5, state police power extends only to immediate threats to public safety, health, welfare, and etc. Michigan versus Duke. Which speeding and driving are not, which was extended in California versus Farley. Number 6, the state is prohibited from violating substantive rights. Owen versus City. And it cannot do by one power, for example, police power, that is, for example, prohibit expressly to any other such power, for example, taxation, eminent domain, or any of those as a matter of law, nor indirectly that which is prohibited to it directly, which is pretty much saying that they can't violate any of your substantive rights.
And then make excuses by going around the corner to make up some kind of regular law, or I say some rule or some kind of ordinance to subvert the law and then take people's car or boot their car or take their car or even give them a ticket.
Right.
Continue.
Yes. Number 7, traveling in an automobile on the public roads is not a threat to the public safety or health and constituted as no hazard to the public, and such a traveler owed nothing more than due care as a regard of tort for negligence to the public, and the owner owed no other duty to the public. He or she and her auto having equal rights to the roadways or highways as horses and wagons. This same right still substantive rule in speeding, running stop signs, traveling without license plates or registration are not threats to public safety and thus are not arrestable offenses. So I read that kind of fast. But it pretty much says that traveling in an automobile on public roads is not a threat to public safety or health, as long as you're driving with due care in regards for other people on the road. That the owner and its car have equal rights on the public highways, and I do say car as an auto, as horses, wagons, or anything else that you could use as a mode of conveyance for travel. Not running stop signs, speeding, traveling without a license or registration, none of these are threats to public safety and thus are not arrestable offenses.
Do you see the laws being violated? And they took an oath to uphold this, and they were what? They were hitmen, and they were absolutely violating the law. They targeted her, and what do you have these black shills talking trash, defending the gang of New York, pretending to be officers when they're carrying out Klan activities with the black shills paid off in the community to muddy the water.
Let it also be said that you're not an officer unless you're elected.
Exactly, which is why you don't call them that, because they're not.
So when you go, what's the power
They're
of officer?
highwaymen, which you can also read in the law book.
You
Continue to
automatically
read.
give them jurisdiction. So,
Yes.
continuing on to number 8. Under the United States Republic's constitutional system of government, and upon the individuality and intelligence of the citizen, the state does not claim control one's conduct to others, leaving one the sole judge as to all that affects oneself. Meaning, under the Constitution, you have the right to be your own master.
It means now you understand that even the seatbelt fines and all that stuff is BS.
If you as the master choose not to wear a seatbelt, then you as the master
It's
of
your
sole
right.
decision.
You see what they've been doing, robbing the people? See why the Pope expunged their licenses? Continue to read.
Number 9, where rights secured by the Constitution are involved, there can be no rulemaking or legislation which would abrogate them.
And they've been doing everything but that happening.
Miranda versus Arizona, and everybody's familiar with Miranda rights.
Yeah, continue.
10, the claim and exercise of constitutional rights cannot be converted into a crime. The claim and exercise of constitutional rights cannot be converted into a crime.
And what they've been doing, converting people's rights into crimes, call them sovereign citizen terrorists for exercising constitutional rights, and they're counting on the ignorance of the masses under the control of their Negro black leader guys that they put in the neighborhood. You see the point? Keep on reading.
Number 11, for a crime to exist, there must be an injured party.
It's called corpus delicti. Continue.
Corpus delicti. There can be no sanction nor penalty imposed on one because of this constitutional right.
Continue.
Number 12, if any tribunal court finds absence of proof of jurisdiction over a person and subject matter, the case must be dismissed. The accuser bears the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Louisville versus Motley.
So they don't have delegation of authority to carry out what they're carrying out, and when questioned, what are they doing? They're what? Threatening, shooting, beating up, and harming people and arresting them in violation of law and in violation of the oath of ethics, and people sitting around talking about they don't know.
But these are your law enforcers.
No, the people don't know. This is what's wrong. Continue.
13, lack of federal jurisdiction cannot be waived or overcome by agreements of parties. Griffin versus Matthews. And want of jurisdiction may not be cured by the consent of parties.
That means you can't even give the right away, and they can't even take it. You can't even contract it away. So you can't even get a license or lose them. Do you understand? See why these? You see why these so-called with the role of these so-called black leaders really are to keep the people diverted? But it doesn't appear like that on the surface, does it? Does it? Until you restore the reference points to our people that has been removed from them. You know yourself that most of our people don't have this information, and the so-called black leaders don't give it to them. And why are they attacking the Moors? Because we've been giving the people the information that they've been paid to hold back. And so they take us as enemies because we're exposing them as what exactly they are, COINTELPRO operatives. And we don't have to say it. All we have to do is educate the people, and it becomes absolutely obvious.
So I have two more that
Go
aren't
ahead.
necessarily a part of the 13
Yes, but go ahead.
original, but these are two of my favorites just
Go
because.
ahead. All right.
It says, a person driving an automobile cannot be stopped to see if he or she is licensed to drive, unless there is a reasonable suspicion the person is engaged in criminal conduct. That's Delaware versus Prowse. But it's interesting because when you come to criminal conduct, you come to find in a different court case that says traffic infractions are not a crime. People
And what do
versus
they
them.
do? They be arresting the people who say crime.
Oh,
And
you
they-
had reasonable suspicion to pull me over,
Yes.
but nothing about driving is a crime.
Now you
so
see
it
them-
would never be reasonable suspicion to pull me over.
Now you see them, what do you call them, where they block off highways and force people into these cones and start asking them for stuff and their papers and stuff, that's a violation of law.
That happened to us once.
And them live stops and stuff like that, that's a violation of law.
We were driving through New Mexico, they were looking for Mexicans in the trunk.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
We'll continue.
I have a couple.
Go ahead.
So, if a state converts a liberty into a privilege, the citizen can engage in the right with impunity. So,
That means you can sue, that doesn't it?
right.
Now you see why they blocking. Now you see why they put a hit on her, because she sued them. And their bonds were going up. They know that the masses are ignorant, so they set out their black shills to start attacking immediately to muddy the water and act like she was out to lunch. But they only can get away with that because they know this information is not available to our people.
Licenses are for the conduct of business, profession, occupation, the exercise of which they are a privilege. Licensing is in the nature of a special privilege.
That's CDLs. That's only for commerce. It's not for common people. Do you see how clear that is? Meaning that how far do they have to go to beat it into our head that it doesn't apply to the living person, natural person, that they've been imposing it on you. They've converted your right into a crime, converted into a privilege, and then robbing you. Then stealing your stuff in the name of law, not in with law. And they've set up businesses robbing our people. And what? Economically destroying our families.
The purpose of this license or licensing in the nature of a special privilege is entitling licensee to do something that he or she would not be entitled to do without a license. Driving is something that you need a license to do, but you have
That's
a
for commerce
constitutional right
only.
to travel.
Right, now
As
you
natural
know that.
people, we have a constitutional right to travel. And then some people say, oh, well, they'll come take my car, or certain things about their car and registration.
Now what they're
about
saying
my
is what
tag?
these people practice. They're not, see at that point, they're not talking law. They're identifying the criminality, but they're not calling it criminality. That's where the problem is.
Right.
Because they're ignorant.
And they hold these people with authority that they
Yes,
have.
because they went down to the Army Navy store and bought a blue suit, and they're organized crime. So the Supreme Court is telling you that. And I know you've already read cases where the Supreme Court has declared those state courts and them traffic courts as incompetent. I know you read that. Oh, there you go. Why don't these so-called black leaders deal and expose this to the people, since they want to deal with our people's liberty? Because they would have to admit what? That the Moors are talking facts, not some belief system. But because they don't want this information out, because they're getting kickbacks from these corporate entities like the Southern Christian Poverty Law Firm, etc., they act like the Moors are out to lunch and creating problems. What they mean is, because if these Europeans can't steal people's cars, they can't split the funds with their black leaders in the communities whose job it is to keep these people on this marching treadmill.
Now, speaking of that, this is the last Supreme Court case,
Go ahead.
and it's now my new favorite. Officers of the court have no immunity when violating a constitutional right from liability, for they are deemed to know the law.
So what are they saying? Are they excused?
No,
And what do we keep on doing?
excusing them.
And so if you excuse them, what are you doing? You're sanctioning the injury on your own self and your own people.
we're excusing them, we're letting
Yeah,
them get
there
away
is
with
no
everything
excuse.
that they're doing.
See, this is the whole point. There is no excuse, and we keep making it for them. Do you see why our people need this information? Is there a gray area? The gray area is their ignorance. And they keep interjecting their own biases and their beliefs. You're not dealing with biases and beliefs, you're dealing with the law. You're either going to be in the law or you're going to be out of it. Now you see why they call us people of color? Because they're fake, but they want the rights of humans. You see the problem?
Yes.
And then they keep on marching and praying and complaining because they don't have rights, but they themselves keep rejecting the law.
Yes, and remove themselves from the families, but want the families.
Now
to
you understand
support.
why Drew Ali said what coming back into the constitutional fold of government. You're part and parcel of this said government, but you keep deluding, practicing them things to delude to slavery. Then they got these shills out here promoting it, looking legitimate like black scholars. You get the point? Now you understand why they're attacking Moors, conscious Moors, even though they know they're Moors too. And they're doing all this black versus Moor. And you do, I'm telling you, but once you understand this, you understand that our job is to get this information to the people because they get caught in this gray area until they're really educated. And we got to get them over the hump of the emotional thing and make them think we're not attacking their black leader guys.
Right.
We're delivering them their knowledge of their birthright, and they keep thinking it's a belief.
They keep asking for help, they keep wanting an answer, we keep giving it to them, they go, oh, not that, we need other help from some.
Right, know what they keep asking? We're drowning. Teach us how to swim, then you show them how to swim. No, I don't want you to teach me like that, I want you to teach me how I know how.
I don't want a doggy
Well,
paddle,
if you
I want a
can't
backstroke.
swim, if you can't swim, listen to the instructions.
They don't want doggy paddle, they want backstroke.
And then when other people from other nations, out of frustration, just abandon us, then they want to act like they're white. Because they are. Because it's a legal status. Do you?
Yes.
So read Free White Persons too, since you're there. Because we want to take advantage of this moment since Nathaniel, he'd been running himself in the hole to try to make this happen. So I give him credit for being tired and still trying to get some work done after working all day. Yeah. Free white persons. Free
Under free.
white persons. And of course, you know it's a status, but you already know that the job of the shills is to keep telling our people that they're black and that the European's a white man.
Free.
Right. Which of course gives up their birthright again.
All right. Free white persons. Free white persons referred to in the Naturalization Act as amended by Act July 14, 1870, has meaning naturally given to it when first used in 1 Sanction 103 C3, meaning all persons belonging to the European races, then commonly counted as white, and their descendants, including such descendants in other countries to which they have immigrated.
Right.
Then it goes down into legality.
And where you see it, say the phrase so that people can be very clear because it's condensed, because it's a law book. So where it says it, say it in full, free white persons, so it can be clearly understood.
Free white persons includes all European Jews, more or less intermixed with the peoples of Celtic, Scandinavian, Teutonic, Iberian, Latin, Greek, and Slavic descent. It includes...
Free white persons.
Free white persons includes Magyars,
Magyars,
Lapps and Finns, and the Basques of Albanians. It includes
Free white
free white
persons.
persons includes mixed Latin, Celtic, Iberian, and Moorish inhabitants of Spain and Portugal, and mixed Greek, Latin, Phoenician, and North American inhabitants of Sicily, and the mixed Slav and Tartar inhabitants of South Russia. Free white persons does not mean Caucasian race.
Repeat it.
Free white persons does not mean Caucasian race.
Repeat it.
Free white persons does not mean Caucasian race, Aryan race, or Indo-European races, nor the mixed Indo-European, Dravidian, Semitic, or Mongolian peoples who inhabit Persia. A Syrian of Asiatic birth and descent will not be entitled to become a naturalized citizen of the United States as being a free white person.
So you can see it's a legal status, isn't it? And you see North Africans, Moors, Moorish, Phoenicians, etc. are all white people, aren't they?
Yeah.
And it does not mean Caucasian race, does it? So what happens when our people keep calling these Europeans white man? They just call them sovereign. You see the problem?
I have all of my friends no longer referring
Now, the point that I'm making to you,
the European.
So-
you're refer-
it is our
We should
duty
change
to
our
get this
language.
knowledge back to our people because they've been deprived.
starts to say that.
This, all of this and more is part of their miseducation that they admit to. And they're handicapped. And we're trying to do what? Help redeem them. Now you understand what Drew Ali says? Help in the great missionary work to bring our people back into the constitutional fold of government. That has nothing to do with belief, does it? We're dealing with evidence and documents, aren't we?
Yes.
And we've got to get the people to recognize that and not approach this from an emotional point of view because they have been trained to think it's a religious belief. And it's their birthright. And of course, the exposure of this information logically will cause institutions that's been living off these people to collapse. And then what it does, it takes the finance out of the black leader pockets who the corporate entities are paying in the background.
If only they knew what the rights of the indigenous people did.
That's why Obama had to do it. It's also almost like
they knew.
it's almost like there's constant action to try to get these people back to their nationality, and the black leaders keep on leading them away. You know, talking about the Moors are out to lunch.
They all talk about how they went their 40 acres and a mule, but won't pick up
And
a book to figure out
don't
who
even
they
know
are.
anything about the 3630, and don't even know anything about the Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands.
They
Don't even
want
know that's the
some
official
kind of
name.
reparation for ancestors that they won't respect or get
They
to learn about.
exactly keep this in mind. If not in their proper person and not see now, let's look at reparations. Matter of fact, look at reparations and look what the requirement is. And notice that it's talking about nations.
Nations.
Therefore, nationality. So if you're not of a nation, can you get reparation?
No.
Logic. Read reparations. And so you must name the nation, mustn't you? You got to name the parties. It must be specific, mustn't it? They talk about, well, the white man and the black man, but according to the green man, no matter what color you are, need black reparations. Do you understand how asinine that is? But they don't know because they don't know better. Because they've been misled by Europeans and their what? Shill black leader guys. Who they think are scholars.
While she looking up that, can you explain why you don't want, why they shouldn't be, anybody shouldn't be calling us sovereign citizens? Because I noticed that they called Karen a
Because
sovereign citizen.
it doesn't go together. And that was set up by, I think it was that order there, that Southern Christian Poverty Law Center, under the CIA.
There's two
Black
different
Mother.
groups.
Yeah, well basically, yeah, it's a misrepresentation. See, because
Dred Scott came to that.
under Constitution law, sovereignty is the people. It's a right. But the deal of it is, number one, if you say citizen, you must name the nation state. The word citizen doesn't go by itself. And this goes back to the 14th Amendment. See, so what they're implying is that our people are 14th Amendment citizens, which is really stock, and therefore they can't be sovereign. Therefore they're doing seditious acts. You see the trap? That's why they create the tag. When it's a fraud. In other words, what they do, they misrepresent the people, mistag them, then attack them on that misinformation.
So instead of sovereign citizen, just national?
No, we're nationals of the land. You see, you have nationals, you have citizen, you have subject, and you have aliens. These are different statuses. And none of which Moors, conscious Moors, claim to be. You see, we're nationals. So what they're doing, just like they put it's called an act of barratry. This is where they create fictitious statements and fictitious names, and then use them, attack the people when the people didn't say that status. And literally they're lying. Misclassify people and then attack them on it. We're national, we're Moorish nationals, the people of the land. That ain't sovereign citizen. Although the people under the corporate United States have a right to claim that if they want to. But that doesn't apply to us as a land, we're nationals. This is why people need to understand government and understand the operations of government. This is also why it's important for the people to even say, read the letter from George Washington, because if they decipher that, they can understand what their status is even from that. And then they can understand that the treaty between belligerent parties. Go ahead, sis, read that.
Well, she's saying it doesn't necessarily say anything about a nation anyway.
It doesn't in this definition of reparations, but the one that I do know is for the repairing of nations.
Yes, exactly. And so, is that repairing of colors?
It says the redress of an injury, amends for wrong inflicted.
Yes.
Reparations is
That's short.
Yeah.
In other words, now you must name it's back to for any claim in law to be actionable, the parties must be named and it must be specific. That's what reparation is. Between one nation or body of nation that injured another nation. They must be named, and in international that means they must be restored and repaired. That's reparation. There's another reason why they took our people's nationality, so that they couldn't make a claim. You see the point? On top of the fact, putting their names on our people so that when our people try to make an argument, they're on the wrong side of the chessboard.
Yeah, the other definition.
You could,
Compensation for.
and they don't know better
Damage.
because no one's explaining to them that you cannot sue in another man's name for a right. You can't sue your own opposition. In other words, you can't sue Smith while you claim to be Smith when he's really Smith and you ain't.
Right.
Dred Scott, you see the concept? And our people, the only reason they don't get it is because they're misled by the so-called black leaders that keep saying,
Most people don't even really understand the depth of what happened with the Dred Scott case.
which
They
is
got
the
taught in
most
school,
important.
So
Let's
understand
qualify
that
this.
they missed the most important parts for what it meant for
It's
us to
status.
not be citizens.
Status. Now look at this. Let's qualify it. And then come back to what you said. The Dred Scott case is the most important slave case ever to come before the Supreme Courts of the United States. Now back up to what you said and you see how not only are we declared incompetent, but the so-called black leaders will never really go into that. If they do, they'll call it racism and won't argue that it's a status issue. The same thing with Amistad. Same principle. And the rule don't change. And then half of the people aren't even aware of the Dred Scott case, are they? Yet it's the most important slave case ever. And most of them couldn't even give you a dissertation on it. Do you see the real problem? And why not? They're following their black leaders who they think are working in their interest, who are really COINTELPRO operatives.
Because Black Lives Matter, not all that stuff you're talking about.
And they're not black. Now, black lives matter, green lives do too, so do the purple ones. How about the orange ones? How about the plaid
Out
ones?
here fighting for the polar bears, then
And now they're mad because some of the Europeans muddied the argument by saying white lives matter. Now they're mad against, you see how convoluted that is? And they don't get it that they're being played with.
The best part of that, actually, I did see, like I said, I don't have the news or watch TV, but I did see a little bit of that footage. And when they were going live in New York City with the protest for Black Lives Matter,
Yeah.
you see how quickly they had to change the caption at the bottom. Because the people who were walking up the streets with their hands up didn't look like you and I.
Exactly.
All
And they're
lives
right
matter.
that Black Lives Matter because
we need to
they're
stand up
black
for that.
people.